So we figured it would be interesting to learn. Anna, we're all blinded by the lights. So I figured it would actually be interesting, rather than having a sort of traditional sort of format of a talk, just to ask each of you to introduce yourselves and talk about the origin stories of your companies, how they came to be, how you went from lab to actual businesses. And maybe, Jose, you want to start, and we'll just go down the line like that.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So yeah, the origin story. So how did you get from science in the labs, which, as we've been saying, is hard to communicate, knowing you had confidence, to a company?
Yeah. So well, I'm a scientist, obviously, and I think that the first step, and I think that this is very important in case there are policymakers, I mean, it's research, the doing research for research, just the fun part, right? I mean, do not think that we come with ideas which are already directed towards a product. No, I think that it's very, very important that everyone understand that the basic of all of that is the freedom that we have in the labs to do research. So funding research for research is very important. But then it comes that you get more and more interested in what you're doing. And we scientists write papers. I mean, it has been mentioned that typically are very technical, very complex. But at the very end, the last 4 lines, we talk about impact. No? And then you write in your paper, oh, and these, by the way, can be used by someone else to solve a challenge. And then you move to another paper. And then it's a different topic. And you write a different 3 ending lines. Someone else can take this, no? But eventually you think, or in my case, I thought one day, well, why don't you try to go beyond that 3 lines and you yourself try to have the impact. And then you realize that you are not very well equipped. I think that we're going to ask this question later on. Scientists, research organizations are not very well equipped to take that challenge. And I think that you need eventually to find the right team. So in our case, there were also some failures. We didn't have the right team. You tend to talk to your own peers. You tend to talk to scientists, other engineers to help you, and then you go to do some amateur pitches to investors. And even if you are a professor, they tell you, oh yeah, very well, very nice, but by the way, you're missing so much, And in our case, it was very interesting. In one of those, I was pitching to a VC, so we directly went to VCs. I must say that the technology that we develop at InBrain is a technology that has been funded over 8 years by the European Commission. So there has been a very large project in Europe called Graphene Flagship Funding, this technology. And we had time to mature, and then we decided to go directly to investors. And in one of these VCs, I think that I met the person who helped very much to do the transition, which is now the CEO of the company, Carolina Aguilar, who should be here, but she had to leave. Yeah, I know. I told it's not the same person, but okay, I'm doing my best. I'm sorry.
You are.
Okay. And it was very interesting, and this is the lack part of all the stories, I was pitching there, and the investor told me, oh, very nice. Actually, I don't understand what you're telling me very much, but there is one person here who might understand you. And Carolina, at that moment, she came from Medtronic, a very large medical company. I mean, it happened that she was involved in neuromodulation before, and she was quitting the field. And then she listened to the pitch and said, no, this looks interesting. Let's give a try, right?
So I'm wondering, are you hearing your own experience echoed in this, or was it completely different for you?
Well, first of all, I'm Ana Maiques. Sorry I couldn't be here today, but it's a treat and a pleasure to be among so many friends. So I'm really looking forward to catch up with you all. So in the case of Neuroelectrics, it was a different story because from day one, the company was co-founded by 2 heads, a scientist, Giulio Ruffini, whom many you know, who is a physicist and a mathematician, and myself, who am a business person, but I like to say I'm a saleswoman, right? So when Giulio was there thinking about the future of the brain, I was thinking, yeah, that's right, but we need to pay payroll today. We need to pay people today. So while he was researching, I was knocking at doors and saying, well, will you buy this? And people say, no way, this is research. So, so that was the way. And still, I think that two-head company, these two co-founders, so strong from day one, has made Neuroelectric successful because we still have an obsession with the science to really decode the brain, but also an obsession to make sure that science is taken to the patients, which is also so hard. I mean, I think both things, understanding the brain is hard, but taking a new therapy to the market, oh Lord, that's also a hard thing to do. So, I think we have these two heads in the company, and I have learned to be more patient with science. And I think scientists have learned that we need to make payroll and please our board and our investors. So I think it's a beautiful combination of two cultures in a single company.
So it's a model that you would recommend other people?
Of course.
You would. Javier?
Well, so in our case, the history of BitBrain is that I was a professor in the university, and like 12 years ago, 13 years ago, we built like a very, very important prototypes of brain-computer interfacing. We built like the second prototype controlled by thought alone, the first prototype of robots in teleoperation, first exo that was controlled in 3D with non-invasive technology and so on. And we are in an engineering school in the University of Zaragoza. And then the coverage was massive from Science, Nature, and many, many different journals. And we started to receive a lot of letters from patients from all around the world. We were not used about this. I mean, letters, people asking for the technology, when I would be able to have this technology in the house and so on. And also medical people, they wanted to help the patients and so on. And we realized, I was in my lab, I saw these devices there, said, well, this is not gonna happen soon, because we have these EEG technologies with gels. It took like 24 hours to place, after wash the hair. And even to give you an example, only the wheelchair, it took to us like 40 minutes for calibration, meaning that before starting to control the wheelchair, you need to be seated down, things that happen around, and then we learn how the brain of this person responds. 40 minutes, okay? Well, so also European Commission was putting a lot of money in the brain-computer interface technology with always the same question. When is this technology going to reach the society? Well, with all of this in the table, Maria was postdoc, Maria Lopez, founder, and she's also around. She was postdoc in the lab, and she told me, look, Javier, there is a tremendous opportunity now here, and we want to build a vehicle that will bring this technology into the society. Of course, I told Maria, look, Maria, I can't see this, how we are going to put this technology in the house of the people where we are in the lab 40 minutes, 30 minutes. Javier, the mission of the company that we are going to create, BitBrain, is this, is to put the technology one day in the house of the people. So in the last 10 years, 12 years, we have been doing the research about this. We had to be very patient, as Anna said, because we had to create new materials, electronics, new devices, not build like increment devices, build devices from scratch to be usable by the patients or even children. And now is a very beautiful moment for BitBrain because, as you saw yesterday, we are in a moment that we are around arriving to this next generation of technology where we feel that we are starting to touch the society. But I also agree with Anna, new challenge arrived, like some of the therapies that you saw yesterday, BitBrain has to do the effort to make this happen in the house of the people under the medical regulation, which is an issue.
Anna, I want to come back to you because yesterday we heard particularly about the science coming out of these other two companies, and we haven't really heard enough about Neuroelectric. So maybe you could just sort of step back a little bit and describe more what your company does and about the science behind it, even though I know you're the business side of it. But tell us a bit more about.
So this is the moment when people start to recognize me.
We were talking yesterday about gadgets, so you brought.
So this is Neuroelectric technology. Now it's funny because sometimes I'm in dinners and conferences, and then I'm in a dinner and I'm normal, and then I put the cap on, and then people say, "Oh, you are the one with the cap. You are Anna." So now it seems that if I don't put the cap on, nobody recognizes me. So this technology that you're seeing here, it's wireless. As you can see, I could be home. And it can do two things. It can monitor your brain activity, so-called electroencephalography or EEG. But what we are most excited about is that any of the 32 leads or electrodes I could be wearing right now can inject currents into the brain. So this is called transcranial current stimulation, and I'm sure Alvaro talk about this new non-invasive form. So this is right now my brain in real time. And the beauty is that, of course, in blue, you see less activation or less activity, in red more. If we identify that a patient with epilepsy, one area of the brain is hyperexcited, I can decide, or we can decide to inject inhibitory currents over the focus to reduce seizures. Or in the case of depression, we are stimulating the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex to really excite brain activity. So I think this is a game changer in terms of taking these patients home and not only recording their brain activity, but using that to really stimulate the brain in ways it hasn't been possible before. So the company was born in Barcelona, but thanks to mentors like Alvaro, who is our advisor from day one and really supported us from day one, we scaled up the company to Boston, and now we are doing 2 FDA trials. We are doing 190 patients, FDA breakthrough designation, phase 3 pivotal randomized control study in more than 40 hospitals to show that we can reduce seizures in children that don't respond to medication. This was started in Boston with Alvaro and Boston Children's Hospital. And we show after 10 days of stimulation, 20 minutes every day, that we could reduce seizures 47%. It's pretty remarkable because the alternative for these patients that don't respond to medication is surgery. So I think this is very important, and hopefully, and fingers crossed, by the end of next year, we'll have our 190 patient readout, and we may become the first company in the world to go through the FDA with this new modality of neuromodulation. So a big jump from beautiful Barcelona at the top of the Tibidabo mountain to then Boston to the doors of the FDA and making this therapy a reality. And then with Alvaro during COVID, Alvaro said, Ana, why don't we write to the FDA and tell them that patients cannot go to receive TMS? Why don't we do depression at home? And see, the COVID and pandemic is an opportunity. We reach out to the FDA, and they allow us to stimulate 35 patients at home without going to the hospital with this device. And we just had a beautiful readout of the first 35 patients. The results are really nice. It's an open label study, but now we are going to move into pivotal phase, 300 patients, again, a phase 3 pivotal randomized control study. And we also aim to become, in 24 months, a new therapy for patients with mental health. So to me, this is the beauty of working with scientists, with doctors, of really cracking the brain from an electric perspective and making sure we take this to therapy. So we are very excited, and my co-founder is very excited of what we call the neurotwins, or digital copies of your brain. So every time we collect EEG or we stimulate the brain, we put this in a digital copy of your brain on the cloud. It's a computational neuroscience model of the brain that takes the biophysics of your brain with the MRI and also your electrophysiologic. And we hope we can simulate on the cloud with these neurotwins the response of your brain before you even give a treatment to a patient. So this is also a game changer in terms of technology. And we have 25 people in the company only building brain models, physicists, mathematicians. So, it's a hard problem, and, they're not perfect models, but I think they will help. So, in a nutshell, we are very excited. It has been a long journey, and I can share how hard it was to go from Barcelona to Boston. Raise a Series A of 20 million, where everybody say you're a woman from Barcelona, you're never going to raise money in Boston. It was a hard lesson learned, but we did it. And there are many stories about how you can scale up from Europe to the world, beautiful companies.
And you still have a base in Barcelona?
Yes.
And so tell me a little bit more, because we are all interested in that, in keeping that base going in Barcelona and developing it, and whether it's, is Boston now the HQ, or how does it work?
No, so we still have more people in Barcelona than in Boston. Our investors are Americans. It's all, the money is coming from the United States. But I think talent is everywhere, and we have amazing talent in Europe. So I think as an entrepreneur, you need to really take advantage of the different territories. So we have almost 100 people in Barcelona, almost 20 in the US, all across the territory. And I think that we gather talent in Europe from Eastern Europe, from all the European countries, lots of engineers. So I think, and then we develop all of our clinical trials in the US, mostly. So I think that we continue. We also have people deployed in Beijing because we sell our devices in the Asian market as well. And so I think it's a global company. We are a small company, but with a global ambition. And I think that I lead the Spanish Association of Spanish Unicorns. And I like to say that, you know, any entrepreneur from Spain, from France, from Italy, from ever should aspire to scale up and build successful companies. So that's, you know, there are many beautiful companies in Spain. In Madrid, you know, we have Jovan Talent, Cabify, we have Filmin, Redpoints, Wallbox. There are unicorns, and nobody talks about the Spanish unicorns, right? Or Europeans to that stage, right? So I think that we have to learn to sell ourselves a little bit better as well.
Yeah, so the challenges, I mean, those were fantastic. Thank you for such a fantastic presentation of your company. But does that resonate with you, this notion of, you know, expanding and reaching other markets and the challenges?
Yeah, sure. Well, I think that InBrain has probably different challenges as well. No, we've grown. I mean, we have our Series A in 2021, and we are now 50 people. We have also our office in Barcelona, although we are pan-European. We have many. I mean, we have colleagues from Netherlands, France, Italy. InBrain has, I think that has the same mission, which is decoding the brain into breakthrough medical solutions, but we are addressing different challenges in the sense that we are proposing invasive technology. There are disorders that require a different level of precision, getting closer to the brain, and this is where we are. And therefore, the challenges are relatively different, right? In terms of engineering, we have to come up with engineering solutions to make sure that the implants that we're going to develop are going to last for 10, 20 years, right? And this is a major engineering challenge, you know? Then from the perspective of the regulatory challenges, it's also different in the sense that we are going to be bringing novel materials in contact with brain tissue. And this novel material is considered a nanomaterial, nanotechnology. At the European level, we don't even have the guidelines properly written to how we should handle nanomaterials in the frame of medical technologies in contact with, you know, when you think of the guidelines, there are like different versions, and it's an additional challenge for a young company. And then, of course, I think when thinking of challenges, you also have about financial or competition challenges. You mentioned US versus Europe, no? Competition from the US is very, very strong. There are many US companies in the field of invasive brain-computer interfaces. They are capable of raising more funding than we are in Europe because the profile of the VCs is also very different, no? So also this financial challenge is very different. Is different for company based in Europe.
I know we're getting, I think,
There's
I can't see the lights there, but Javier, you pick it up. No, you're not. I'm going to move, and so there's a chair up there.
It's Maria que queda.
For Maria.
Yeah.
Or I can take the high chair there.
Do you want me
Welcome. I know you've been racing around, so a very warm welcome onto the stage. Thanks so much for joining us. So Maria, maybe you want to sort of introduce yourself a little bit to everybody here, and actually you can tell us exactly what you've been doing this morning, because it's part of the challenges of a startup.
Can you repeat, please, because I'm read.
Yeah,
okay.
I can handle this.
Okay.
So I'm gonna. Jose was saying, I think that BitBrain is also in a different stage. So in our case, we have been like it took us 10 years to arrive where we are, 12 to 12 years, and our challenge was to secure the science. So for this reason, funding was very important for us. A decision that we took is maybe incorporate private investors, but in a later stage. Because science was very important for us. Science needs time, needs consolidation, and yeah, the only way for us to protect this to reach where we are was this, okay? And another important thing is regulation. Regulation not only for medical device regulation, but also for the clinical trials. So it took to us a tremendous effort in having the approval of the 4 clinical trials that we have. Now our clinical trials are here in Spain yet, because it's the state where we are. But understanding not only the medical device regulation, but also the clinical regulation that applies to the clinical trial was a challenge for us.
Yeah, for me, just to add that for us it's very important to de-risk the project. I think that we need the time, we need the people to be committed, to be... I think that for us the culture is also very important. The team has to be, you know, I think that they don't have to be scary to have innovations on the table and to make mistakes and things like that in this stage. I think that if we want to go in a big innovation, we have to do it like this.
What are the opportunities or needs for collaboration? You have very different companies with different goals, but certain things in common. And I'd love, I mean, maybe Anna, you could pick that up.
In general, in collaboration, you mean?
Yeah, collaborating between companies, figuring out how to approach regulatory issues or some of the other common challenges you get.
Yeah, I think we cry a lot with our, you know, other portfolio companies or founders that I meet, you know, in conferences or you know, I think that we all face a lot of challenges as companies. One of them is the fight for talent, right? One of the most challenging things for a company, and I guess also for a university, is, you know, the fight for talent, which is global. So sometimes I reach out to CEOs or other companies, right, to say, listen, if you recruited a head of VP in clinical operations, you know, send me some CVs of the people that you didn't recruit, right? That's an example. Fundraising stories are always great to talk over coffee because you feel miserable when, you know, a term sheet is not good or there are abusive terms or the negotiation with a fundraising is hard, but then you talk to all these founders and everybody has had a story, right? So, which makes you feel, you know, not so taken advantage of somehow. So I think that talking to founders, there is a forum that happens called Founders that it's around conferences like Web Summit where all these founders only meet, you know, in a small group, and it's like anonymous alcohol, right? It's like you have this side, it's like my life after an IPO, my life, and then people share their stories. So I think that the collaboration amongst companies and amongst founders, I think, is very important because I think it's hard up there, it's lonely, right. And we all face the same challenges. And I think this applies also to people running labs. You know, I'm sure you talk about the same battles and hurdles. So I think it's a community of support and somebody that you can call up to and say, listen, I have this big issue, can you help me out? Right.
I can see Jose's
I'd like to add to what Anna said. I mean, the inner version is very important, not the collaboration between the company, but also the external perception. I mean, building up the ecosystem is very important. No? So when you have talent who wants to come to a country, let's say come into Spain, why are you going to come here? What are the unicorns? Are there deep tech startups in the country? So just having building an ecosystem because there are different companies which are in relatively similar fields is very important for the talent, for the investors, right? If there are no other successful companies in the country, maybe there will not be sufficient investment from abroad, right? So I think that it is not only the internal collaboration, which is very, very relevant, but a perception of the ecosystem and building up the ecosystem, which is key for at the end success of these companies or future companies.
Yes, in our case, I would say that we go further with the collaboration with other companies and universities. We think that if we want to have a real impact in society, we have to collaborate. So maybe us as BitBrain, we can have a clinical trial on dementia, mild cognitive impairment, or whatever. But of course, if we join efforts with other startups, and this is something that we are already doing, we can reach other treatment or diseases. So in our case, we have this amazing hardware, very easy to use, that you can just send to the patient home. And what we are doing is just to do some collaboration with other startups all around the world, and they are including their treatments in our neurohealth platform. And I think that this is the way that we can grow in a very high speed, and we can reach the society better than that if we go alone.